"We have a car, over this way, an old gasoline car. My dad fixed it so it burns oil." The car sputtered and moved slowly forward onto the road. It began to gain speed. Its motor banged and roared. Soon it was moving surprisingly fast. "You saw them," Sylvia said over the racket. "They'd give us anything they had. We saved their lives." She waved at the fields, the farmers and their crude teams, the withered crops, the sagging old farmhouses. They'd all be dead, if it hadn't been for the League. She smashed a fly peevishly. "They depend on us." The black-haired girl turned toward them as the car rushed along the decaying road. "We'll be all right," Penn murmured. The vibration of the car made him a little sick. "Yes," the girl said, her black eyes flashing, her crimson lips twisted. She leaned toward Penn intently, her small face strangely alight. "Yes, we'll take good care of you." At that moment, the car left the road. Sylvia shrieked. Toby threw himself down, head between his knees, doubled up in a ball. A sudden curtain of green burst around Penn. Then a sickening emptiness as the car plunged down. It struck with a roaring crash that blotted out everything. A single titanic cataclysm of fury that picked Penn up and flung his remains in every direction.
"Put me down," Bors ordered, "on this railing for a moment before I go inside."
The crew lowered him onto the concrete surface and fastened magnetic grapples into place. Men and women hurried up the wide steps, in and out of the massive building that was Bors's main offices. The sight from these steps pleased him. He liked to stop here and look around at his world, at the civilization he had carefully constructed. Each piece added painstakingly, scrupulously, with infinite care, throughout the years. It wasn't big. The mountains ringed it on all sides. The valley was a level bowl, surrounded by dark violet hills. Outside, beyond the hills, the regular world began. Parched fields, blasted, poverty-stricken towns, decayed roads, the remains of houses, tumbled-down farm buildings, ruined cars and machinery, dust-covered people creeping listlessly around in handmade clothing, dull rags and tatters. He had seen the outside. He knew what it was like. At the mountains, the blank faces, the disease, the withered crops, the crude plows and ancient tools all ended here. Here, within the ring of hills, Bors had constructed an accurate and detailed reproduction of a society 2 centuries gone. The world as it had been in the old days, the time of governments, the time that had been pulled down by the Anarchist League. Within his 5 synapsis coils, the plans, knowledge, information, blueprints of a whole world existed. In the 2 centuries he had carefully recreated that world, had made this miniature society that glittered and hummed on all sides of him. The roads, buildings, houses, industries of a dead world, all a fragment of the past, built with his hands, his own metal fingers and brain.
"Fowler,"
Bors said. Fowler came over. He looked haggard. His eyes were red-rimmed and swollen. "What is it? You want to go inside?" Overhead, the morning patrol thundered past, a string of black dots against the sunny, cloudless sky. Bors watched with satisfaction. "Right on the nose," Fowler agreed, examining his wristwatch. To their right, a column of heavy tanks snaked along a highway between green fields. Their gun snouts glittered. Behind them, a column of foot soldiers marched, faces hidden behind bacteria masks.
"I'm thinking," Bors said, "that it may be unwise to trust Green any longer."
"Why the hell do you say that?"
"Every 10 days, I'm inactivated, so your crew can see what repairs are needed."
Bors twisted restlessly.
"For 12 hours, I'm completely helpless. Green takes care of me, sees nothing happens. But
what?
It occurs to me perhaps there'd be more safety in a squad of troops. It's too much of a temptation for one man alone."
Fowler scowled. "I don't see that. How about me? I have charge of inspecting you. I could switch a few leads around, send a load through your synapsis coils, blow them out." Bors whirled wildly, then subsided.
"True. You could do that."
After a moment he demanded,
"But what would you gain? You know I'm the only one who can keep all this together. I'm the only one who knows how to maintain a planned society, not a disorderly chaos. If it weren't for me, all this would collapse, and you'd have dust and ruins and weeds. The whole outside would come rushing in to take over."
"Of course. So why worry about green?" Trucks of workers rumbled past, loads of men in blue-green, sleeves rolled up, armloads of tools, a mining team heading for the mountains.
"Take me inside,"
Bors said abruptly. Fowler called McLean. They hoisted Bors and carried him past the throngs of people into the building, down the corridor, and to his office. Officials and technicians moved respectfully out of the way as the great, pitted, corroded tank was carried past.
"All right,"
Bors said impatiently.
"That's all. You can go."
Fowler and McLean left the luxurious office with its lush carpets, furniture, drapes, and rows of books. Bors was already bent over his desk, sorting through heaps of reports and papers. Fowler shook his head as they walked down the hall. He won't last much longer. The motor system? Can't we reinforce the... I don't mean that. He's breaking up mentally. He can't take the strain any longer. None of us can, McLean muttered. Running this thing is too much for him, knowing it's all dependent on him. Knowing as soon as he turns his back or lets down, it'll begin to come apart at the seams. A hell of a job, trying to shut out the real world, keeping his model universe running. He's gone on a long time, McLean said. Fowler brooded. Sooner or later, we're going to have to face the situation. Gloomily, he ran his fingers along the blade of a large screwdriver. He's wearing out. Sooner or later, somebody's going to have to step in. As he continues to decay... He stuck the screwdriver back in his belt, with his pliers and hammer and soldering iron. One crossed wire. What's that? Fowler laughed. Now he's got me doing it. One crossed wire and poof. But what then? That's the big question. Maybe, McLean said softly, you and I can then get off this rat race. You and I and all the rest of us. And live like human beings. Rat race, Fowler murmured. Rats in a maze, doing tricks, performing chores thought up by somebody else. McLean caught Fowler's eye. By somebody of another species. Tolby struggled vaguely. Silence, a faint dripping close by. A beam pinned his body down. He was caught on all sides by the twisted wreck of the car. He was head down. The car was turned on its side, off the road in a gully, wedged between two huge trees, bent struts and smashed metal all around him. And bodies. He pushed up with all his strength. The beam gave, and he managed to get to a sitting position. A tree branch had burst in the windshield. The black-haired girl, still turned toward the back seat, was impaled on it. The branch had driven through her spine, out her chest, and into the seat. She clutched at it with both hands, head limp, mouth half open. The man beside her was also dead. His hands were gone. The windshield had burst around him. He lay in a heap among the remains of the dashboard and the bloody shine of his own internal organs. Penn was dead, neck snapped like a rotten broom handle. Tolby pushed his corpse aside and examined his daughter. Sylvia didn't stir. He put his ear to her shirt and listened. She was alive. Her heart beat faintly. Her bosom rose and fell against his ear. He wound a handkerchief around her arm, where the flesh was ripped open and oozing blood. She was badly cut and scratched. One leg was doubled under her, obviously broken. Her clothes were ripped, her hair matted with blood. But she was alive. He pushed the twisted door open and stumbled out. A fiery tongue of afternoon sunlight struck him, and he winced. He began to ease her limp body out of the car, past the twisted door frame. A sound. Tolby glanced up, rigid. Something was coming. A whirring insect that rapidly descended. He let go of Sylvia, crouched, glanced around, then lumbered awkwardly down the gully. He slid and fell and rolled among the green vines and jagged gray boulders. His gun gripped, he lay gasping in the moist shadows, peering upward. The insect landed. A small airship, jet-driven. The sight stunned him. He had heard about jets, seen photographs of them, been briefed and lectured in the history indoctrination courses at the League camps. But to see a jet... Men swarmed out, uniformed men who started from the road, down the side of the gully. Bodies crouched warily as they approached the wrecked car. They lugged heavy rifles. They looked grim and experienced as they tore the car doors open and scrambled in. "One's gone," a voice drifted to him. "Must be around somewhere. Look, this one's alive. This woman started to crawl out. The rest all dead." Furious cursing. Damn Laura! She should have leaped. The fanatic little fool. Maybe she didn't have time. God's sake, the thing's all the way through her. Horror and shocked dismay. We won't hardly be able to get her loose. "Leave her!" The officer directing things waved the men back out of the car. "Leave them all." "How about this wounded one?" The leader hesitated. "Kill her," he said finally. He snatched a rifle and raised the butt. "The rest of you fan out and try to get the other one. He's probably—" Tolby fired, and the leader's body broke in half. The lower part sank down slowly. The upper dissolved in ashy fragments. Tolby turned and began to move in a slow circle, firing as he crawled. He got 2 more of them before the rest retreated in panic to their jet-powered insect and slammed the lock. He had the element of surprise. Now that was gone. They had strength and numbers. He was doomed. Already the insect was rising. They'd be able to spot him easily from above. But he had saved Sylvia. That was something. He stumbled down a dried-up creek bed. He ran aimlessly. He had no place to go. He didn't know the countryside, and he was on foot. He slipped on a stone and fell headlong. Pain and billowing darkness beat at him as he got unsteadily to his knees. His gun was gone, lost in the shrubbery. He spat broken teeth and blood. He peered wildly up at the blazing afternoon sky. The insect was leaving. It hummed off toward the distant hills. It dwindled, became a black ball, a fly speck, then disappeared. Tolby waited a moment. Then he struggled up the side of the ravine to the wrecked car. They had gone to get help. They'd be back. Now was his only chance. If he could get Sylvia out and down the road, into hiding, maybe to a farmhouse, back to town. He reached the car and stood, dazed and stupefied. 3 bodies remained, the 2 in the front seat, Penn in the back. But Sylvia was gone. They had taken her with them, back where they came from. She had been dragged to the jet-driven insect. A trail of blood led from the car up the side of the gully to the highway. With a violent shudder, Tolby pulled himself together. He climbed into the car and pried loose Penn's gun from his belt. Sylvia's ironite staff rested on the seat. He took that, too. Then he started off down the road, walking without haste, carefully, slowly. An ironic thought plucked at his mind. He had found what they were after, the men in uniform. They were organized, responsible to a central authority, in a newly assembled jet. Beyond the hills was a government.